Dan Borrero. What's up, Dan?
What's going on, Mr. Haskins?
So, Sunday evenings, we come on live to answer your questions, to share with you what we're doing, how we're staying in business. Combined, we've got over 50 years of experience in real estate investing. If I haven't seen it, Dan Borrero has probably seen some type of hybrid of whatever it is you're trying to do. So, please bring your questions on here tonight and interact to see how we can help you in your real estate investing world.
Yep.
Dan,
So
so
we
we're in Vegas. Go ahead.
tell everybody about. Let's talk about it. What we learned, who we met.
Yeah, man. I got a chance to see Jamil, Pace Morby, a lot of other different presenters, and Jamil really rocked my world when he was like, I was doing 60 deals a month. And I came home and my wife left me. I'm like, wow, this is really something, man.
Yeah, his wife left him. And a week later, he got, really ill. He got really sick. On
Yep.
top of that,
Yep. So
yeah,
I got to think about my life too with these back surgeries. Dan, do you ever think about like you work? Do you ever say, you know what, man, this is it. I got to take a break. This is it.
yeah. You know my story, man. We've been friends a while. So last year, when I turned 60, I decided that it was time. I said to myself, if I'm lucky, I have maybe 15 more years that my body allows me to do what I want to do.
That's it.
And I've been going to all the places I've wanted to go to.
We both was
And
hurting. We was in Vegas hurting. Both of us are like, man, shit, I'm hurting walking around these places.
yeah, my back was killing. Chris was like, let's hang out." It was like 12:30. I'm like, "Chris, I'm done, man." I
I
was
was
like,
hurting at 11 o'clock. That was my second win.
"Yeah, that was your second win." We on the way back, we figured let's stop for a nightcap at the bar. We had just come back from walking on the street. Not for nothing though. We had tell everybody we had a healthy dinner.
Yeah, it was good. Finally.
We get Yeah, we ate at Peter Luger's and we were stuffed. We were like, yeah, we got to walk this off. So we went walking down the strip, and then we said, let's have a nightcap. And Chris got his second win, but I didn't get my second win.
So I like to talk to y'all about the story. See, I'm gonna be transparent and tell y'all a lot of stuff. I'm not gonna speak for Dan, but for me, I can't say on live on air that a lot of my experiences, because a lot of stuff that I did in my past and that I was involved with, I just don't think it would go well over in the public. Dan,
That's true. Yeah, look, the
gotta,
reality is there's certain things we can't say on here because it's not politically correct, or
right,
we don't want to get canceled. Um,
right, man.
and that could be from both sides of the aisle. There's stupidity on both sides, but we do try to give as much truth as we possibly can within the realm that this social media allows us to.
That's right. We were trading back and forth stories. It felt good.
Yeah.
I gotta tell
It
you,
was
Dan, it felt good.
battle stories mostly.
It felt good. I'm talking to Dan. I'm telling him. He's like, "Holy shit!" There's the stories you're telling me. I'm like, "You never told us online, man. I can't be talking about stuff." So,
Chris, we got to share the one that you made me. I was like looking at you like, what did you do, Chris? Like, I was like, tell me you didn't do that shit. Tell them that, Chris.
so when I first started, I thought that if you owned a house, you could just come and go as you please. I didn't think I was wrong for that, Dan. You didn't think that when you first started?
I thought I was the man. Like, it's my house. It's my house. Like, that shit don't go over very well.
I'm like, so my tenants weren't paying me rent. 2 months went by. Back then, I was scrambling to make ends meet. So $12.50 a month was my mortgage payment, and the rent. I did the burst strategy. I had pulled out $25,000 like a dummy, so my payment was real high. So the tenants hadn't paid, and I was going to eviction court. And if you know anything about evicting a tenant, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So if anything, this business will teach you. If the only thing this business will teach you, it will teach you patience. Would you say, Dan?
Oh, it humbleizes you.
This
You
business,
become humble real quick.
you damn
Tenants,
right.
tenants will learn you. They
Yeah,
will learn you.
they'll take you to your. So this particular tenant hadn't paid me in 2 months. So I'm like, man, I'm done with this. I'm gonna show. I need to get some money in because I was paying this $12.50 a month. It was destroying me. I'm like, okay. Uh, I ran an ad online. Had a ton of people wanted to come. I'm like, I need some new tenants to come in here because I need to get a tenant that's going to pay. They ain't paying. Shit, let me show this to some tenants that can pay some rent. So I ran an ad. I'm like, if you want to see this house, come here at 1 o'clock Thursday. Boom. Cool. So we got 70 people in there. So I'm ran an ad. I put the day before I put a note on the door because the tenant wouldn't answer the phone. I put a note on the door. I'll be showing the house tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Day comes. I drive up to the house. A whole long line of cars waiting to see the property. I go up, knock on the door. Tenant's not there. I'm like, okay, cool. So I try to get in. The screen door was closed, so I knew they were gone because they had locked the screen door. I mean, it was no. I'm sorry. I thought they were there because they had locked the screen doors, but they weren't there. There's no car there. So I couldn't get in through the screen door because all I had was the front door. So you know how some houses they got a window right next to the front
Yeah,
door.
yeah.
So I just raised up the window there and crawled on through the window.
So the window was open. Chris walked in, crawled in through the window.
I'm like, I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm just going in my house. They're
So
cracking up
that
with me.
hold on. So when he's telling me the story, I'm like, "You did what, Chris? No, tell me you didn't do that." And he's like, "Yeah, it's my house. That's the way I thought it was my house." I'm like, it's like, no way did you do that, Chris.
Yo,
Hey, tell him, Chris.
seriously breaking the law, right? So I'm going in. I'm like, man, shoot, okay, I got a ton of people out there. I open up the door. I wave to people, come on in, y'all. First tenant comes in, walks around. I give him an application. All right, let me know. Second tenant walks around. I hear somebody driving. I'm like, oh man, what's going on? So the tenant showed up while I was there, and shortly after, the police came right behind them, and she was screaming and hooping and hollering, telling me I broken into her property. I'm like, this is my property. What are you talking? You ain't pay no rent. Dad really gets a kick out of this. Ignorance, ignorance.
Oh man.
Give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying this story. Smash that like button.
Guys, I couldn't stop laughing. How was I laughing when you telling me the story?
Yo, you was hysterical, kid. I'm laughing. Think about it. So the cops come. I'm like, this is my house. I'm like, what y'all here for? What do
Nope.
you want me to do?
Nigga, get out.
So the cops or the lady goes in there. He goes, who lives here? Who lives here? Because all they can really discern at that time is who lives in the property. They don't know nothing about ownership and all that. So she showed the police the electricity bill. She goes, I live here. I live here. So cops take me over. They put me in handcuffs, y'all. Put me in the back of the car. They said they got to arrest me.
Cuffed him up. Cuffed him up.
Breaking and entering, trespass.
In his property.
I'm like, how can y'all do that? I own this. Makes no sense to me. So long story short, they let me go. They gave me a break. They were like, look, man, don't do this again. Just go to court. This is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. So you got to take her to court. There's nothing you can do. So that's what I learned. Don't try to go around the system. Let the system work, man.
Listen, guys. Now where Chris is at, how long does it take you to get rid of a tenant, Chris?
On the long side, if they dig in about 90 days.
90 days. So all he had to wait was 90 days. New
Yeah,
York City,
no, at that
New York.
time, I'm in Virginia. Man, at that
Okay,
time, it felt like an eternity.
right. So in New York City, it's 26 months now on average in Kings County.
Yeah, what months can't you evict up there?
Can't evict in the winter months either.
Oh,
Marshal won't come. So even if the judge signs a warrant, the marshals can't evict in the winter months.
so is that warrant good for 6 months if you evict them in November?
Yeah, well, I have that hasn't happened to me, but I would assume it is. Because Chris, I don't really evict tenants. I mean, because my tenants go through a deep dive application process that not everyone's just getting my apartments.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to cover some names here, but this is one of my applications that I just approved today.
Wait, on Sunday?
Well, yeah, man, I was away for 4 days and they had filled they they've been waiting since Thursday.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
because
Okay.
I do, I do my Zoom interviews and I check out their personalities and other things. So, but I got it done. But the point is, you know, exactly what the mistake that Kris made. There've been so many more that have made that mistake, and that's why Kris and I are coming out with a class, and that's one of the things we worked on for a day and a half on the workbook to so that you guys don't have to get locked up and make the same mistakes that Kris made.
Well, see, I learned that that's what taught me there are two rights in real estate that I didn't know: ownership and possession. Just because you own the property doesn't mean you have possession, and just because you possess the property doesn't mean you own it. It took me years to learn that though, so that's a lesson y'all learned tonight.
So, guys, put up your questions because that's what Kris and I are here for. We do this every single Sunday night. We're talking real estate. We're here to
Question.
serve you all, right? On entrepreneurship as well as in real estate investing. Kris, let's talk about relationships, right? Our personal relationships with our spouses and how that's affected our business decisions and it also could either, in many cases that you and I have both seen, will stifle somebody's entrepreneurial aspirations
Oh,
versus
um,
where if you're with the right person, they encourage it and it's like a fuel on fire and make that other person to expire to get to their goals. You want to talk about that a little bit, Kris?
yeah, that's so big, man. And Paul productivity label. Where can I get the subject to documents? Just go to chrishaskins.com and type it in. They're right there. Go to the website. Um, your spouse, Warren Buffett said, one of the things that will help you to get wealthy and maintain and keep your wealth is who you choose to marry. I cannot tell y'all, man. And you know what? My wife, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. So her credit, she's like 9 to 5. She does phenomenal on the credit. So we leverage her credit to borrow money from time to time. Not often, but sometimes. So that really takes me up. And I think my community is so hell bent on grind culture. I come from nothing. I did it all on my own. 50 Cent says, I like to thank me. So, yes, your spouse, man, your spouse can make or break you. And oftentimes, Dan, I find spouses they're breaking people, man.
So I just I had an interesting conversation. I don't think I talked to you about this with one of the people that we met at the conference, and he's talking about, like he's just trying to get his wife to back him up, and she gets upset when he wants to do these things.
I
And
vaguely
my
remember the conversation with the guy. I
yeah,
remember y'all doing it.
and my question to him was, well, what have you done in your throughout the course of your relationship with your wife to make her think that you'd be unsuccessful? And
Mm,
he took a step back, like he thought about it. I said, because usually my experience is when either the wife or the husband doesn't want to back up that spouse, it's primarily because that spouse has maybe tried 3 or 4 or 5 different businesses already and failed. And then, did you put 100% into it? Did you literally give everything that you had into that business to make it happen with no excuses?
wow.
Right? So, or have you, do you make $100,000 a year, but you go buy new cars every 2 years, every 3 years, and you spend your money at the gambling table? So why would your wife have any confidence in you to be successful with the business that you say you want to do, but you haven't done anything in your life to show your spouse that you're willing to do everything that's necessary to make that business work, right? That's one
Wow.
thing. Sometimes the spouse truly is not the right person for you if that's what you want to be. So in my case, I've said this dozens of times on lives, I dated my wife for 8 years before I married my wife. And people ask me, well, what took you so long? I said, I needed my wife to understand this is not an easy life. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's difficult on you physically, mentally, emotionally. It's difficult on your wife. It's going to be difficult on your kids. This is a family affair. So, what are your thoughts on that, Kris?
Yeah, it's challenging, man. It's weird you say that. It's difficult not only on everybody, but it's difficult on the relationships too. That's why I'll tell you that I got 4 therapists here at the Haskins house. I got therapists, man, because I'm like, even with the grind that you do, Dan, I got to tell you, y'all don't know this, man, but Dan works hard as shit. I mean,
Thank you.
you 60, you work. I think you work harder than me, a lot harder. I got back issues and stuff. I'm gonna spend some of this money, and you help me to learn. I think, well, Dan, you spending money helps me to understand that I need to start spending some too, man.
Listen, but it took me, I like I said, I turned 60 last year, and I said to myself, you know what? I can't take this with me. We just came back from Puerto Rico for 2 weeks. My wife and I went for a week. We had a great time. My kids met us there a week later, and all my kids are adults, guys, and one of them's married. So when they show up, like the restaurant bill goes sky high. You know, everything is whatever it was, not double, not triple, quadruple. All right.
Yeah.
And my wife and I one day we were laughing in the cab. We were sitting in a van in a minivan. All of us were sitting in. And they were like, "Well, what are you laughing at? Why you guys laughing so much?" And we're like, "Because they're talking about how much of a good time they had. This was the last night there. We laughed. We said, you guys realize we just spent your inheritance money this whole past 2 weeks, right? Like, so I'm glad you had a good time on your inheritance money, you know." So I guess my thing is, guys, it gets to the point where you hustle, you grind, you hustle, you grind, you sacrifice, you hustle, you grind. At one point, you need to stop and smell the roses. But
Yeah, man. Be
you
like
don't want to
Janelle,
stop and smell the roses too early, guys.
too much.
You don't want to do that. There's got to be a balance.
Shay Bay says her husband. Oh, somebody's closing their first subject too. Power productivity label. Hit it. You can do a consultation. I'll help you with that. My hubby wants to take equity out of the house, but I'm skeptical because our rate is so low and mortgage is only 1,100 a month. He wants to buy another property with the equity money. Dan, what would you say to that?
That's a question that she should come on live with us with. Look, at the end of the day, because everybody sits in a different situation, right? So if you're going to tell me you're going to take equity out of the house, your mortgage is going to go up to $3,400. Let's say 2,200. Let's say 2,000 a month. Let's keep it simple. 2,000 a month, right? That next property you buy has to pay no less than $900 back to your house so that your mortgage stays the same at 1,100 out of pocket. That's number one.
That's a good
In
point.
addition, that next property you buy has to sustain itself to pay the mortgage it's going to have, because what you're going to buy is just the money you're pulling out of your house. I'm assuming is just a down payment. So it's that next property also has to sustain itself and still develop enough cash flow to justify the risk. So it's a very fine line. I didn't do that, and Chris did. I know I didn't do that until after I had done like 10 deals. Chris, what about you?
Well, I gotta tell you, no, my first one, I hung myself. I spent it all on consumable goods, and I'm like, that was an expensive lesson. I remember my first line of credit, I spent it all out. Now I owed the first and the second, maxed it out. So Shay Bay, I did do that. I'm telling you, I'm being transparent. I just pulled out 200 from my personal house last week. I just pulled it out. But I did a home equity line of credit, and I have created the discipline in my life to only use that for to buy equity. We only use that to buy equity. So if you can do that, it
Listen,
would.
home equity lines, guys, is you could still keep your existing mortgage at the low rate, do a home equity line of credit, a HELOC,
Yep.
and then you're only charged on the interest of the portion you use. And if you're not using it, you're not paying interest on it, right? You're going to have to leave it open. Most banks do 2 to 3 years that you have to leave it open. Is that what you had, Chris? Yeah, I think you said 3 years, right?
Yep. 3 years they pay all the closing costs. We owe nothing. But
So Chris didn't pay anything for the application, the credit check, the underwriting, the appraisal, the
recording fees,
filing of the mortgage, nothing,
nothing.
nothing. But you
Thank
have to
God.
leave it open for 3 years.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to charge you those closing costs.
But I want people to understand, like, it's weird, Dan, when I see you, like when you walk in the door, right? I just envision you with, you know, those ghost stories when you get ghosts following you around and stuff. I, like when I see Dan, I see hundreds of tenants. I see all these properties like just floating behind them. You just imagine Dan walking down the hall and there's all these properties, all these contractors, all these lenders, all these different attorneys. See, those are the road behind Dan and all those layers that make him who he is. So if you just asking us, should you take the money out? I have no idea what your road looks, you know. So for me, I see that I can literally see the stuff when I walk outside. I see it in my head. This is like I'm the same vessel, but been through so much stuff that has made the person show up here on the screen.
So it's funny. Look, guys, time makes you smart as a result of the mistakes you've made. But the best thing I learned a long time, somebody told me a long time, it was actually my father who said this to me when I was a teenager. And I don't know why this I mean, he said a lot of things to me, but this one particular thing just like hit me like it was like it smacked the shit out of me with a brick or something. And he said, wise men aren't smart. And I was like, but if you're wise, how could you not be smart? And he said, no, wise men are men that learn from other people's mistakes and just makes them look like they're smart.
They know they're not smart. But why? I'm just thinking. I'm like, look, I'm not the sharpest guy in this bunch.
I can tell you right now, I'm definitely not the smart. I'm not smart. Ask any of my teachers, they'll tell you. I was always in the bottom of the class.
You said something that stuck out to me the most this weekend, Dan. You were like, you know what? I couldn't. This guy I was working with, I couldn't work with him, man. He was too smart. Like you can be so smart that you could learn. You can look at something so with such a high education level, it will cause you not to make the right decision.
So let me tell the audience on what we're talking about. I think we have a lot of people on. What do we have on here right now?
90 people, Dan, listening to
90
this.
people, guys. So make sure you follow Chris and I both. Number one, number two, um, you know, put your questions on the chat below, or if you want, come on live because this would work out great too. So there's this one guy named Joey. Love the guy. I'm still friends with him. I have a lot of respect for him, but every time Joey brought me a deal, and he used to bring me a lot of deals, he things would get difficult. The most simplest deals would become problematic. They become a problem. And I'd be like, Joey, you're talking too much. Joey, you're using too many big words. Like, Joey, you're complicating this. Like, this is the simplest way to make a deal, to make business, to make money. I offered you a price, you accepted it. Let's just sign a contract and close on it. It's very simple. I'm going to give you money for you to have the right to manage that property. Because the way I look at it is, I don't own any property. All I'm doing is buying the deed to that property, and I have the right to manage that property until I decide either to sell it to somebody else or I die. Right? Because at the end of the day, we still got to pay taxes and insurance and everything else on it to keep that property. So I'm like, Joey, you're making this too difficult. And I said, Joey, your problem is that you're too smart. I said, Joe, and he goes, well, I graduated top of my class. I said, see, I graduated at the bottom of my class. So this is a good business for somebody simple like me. I don't overcomplicate it because I'm too dumb.
I love it.
Right. So this is not a complicated business, guys. It's a very simple business. Don't overcomplicate it.
Ex Du Bois wants to know what are the best leads to contact for land. Dan, you do land.
I look for land with that people that have owned it for like 20 years, over 10 years to 20 years. Those are people who usually bought it thinking that they were going to do something with it, and now it's a burden. I look for land that I see that's under an estate because that means it must have been it belonged to somebody at one point who passed away, and now it's under the estate. And it, so and usually the kids, it's a burden to them. I look for land that was either in probate or land that's going through a divorce situation. Um, but and then what I do is I have a mailing company, and don't ask me to recommend anybody for that because I won't. And not because I'm trying to keep it a secret, because every time I've recommended these type of companies, I'll get an email like, oh, they sucked or they did this. So I'm not gonna do that. So I give them a zip code, and these are the parameters of the properties that I'm looking for, and then they send out mass letters that I approve the writing on to those type of people. Now you get about a 3% return on those. So if you send out 100,000, or let's say you sent out 1,000, you're going to get 30 people that may call you. And of those 30 people, I usually close about anywhere between 10 and 20%. So I'll get for every 1,000, 3 to 6 lots. And by the way, the first letter you get no response. The second letter you get very little response. It's usually around the third and fourth letter that you send out to these people is when they start responding to you.
You got to be consistent with that stuff. The CEO said he had a friend lost defaulted on a $90,000 commercial hard money loan and lost the house. That's what happens when you take the equity out. Jim
Or you
Mack,
don't come in with enough equity.
yeah, if you don't, yeah, I don't, yeah. As you get older, you learn that keeping the money in the deal makes you work less. Like for me, I used to well, let me ask you, Dan, if you take all the equity, if you extract all the equity out, you still got to go out there and earn, right? And make sure you got to service that debt.
You got to service the debt.
So I'm
Got
not
to
forget
service the debt.
Dan, what would you say? My mentor, before he died, Lonnie Scruggs, he says, Chris, my money can work infinitely harder than I can. I never forget when he told me that shit. I'm like, damn. And then he said, my money can work in more than one place. I can only be in one place at one time. He goes, Chris,
That's the God's truth. I never looked at it that way, but that's so true.
he was telling me that because he could take me to lunch. I go to lunch with him. He's like, my money's working over there, or that house, at this house, this house. I'm like, shit. So here I am trying to work. We can only do one task, but your money can work all around the world.
So this is from Deborah Jackson. Hi Chris, hi Dan. Look like you guys were having fun in Vegas. We did have fun. Whenever I'm in Kris Haskins' vicinity, I'm having a great time. I get along with the guy. I like the guy. It's like we have a lot in common. And by the way, we come from two different parts of the country with two different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But when you battle tested warriors, no battle tested warriors, and we respect each other. So, um, but yeah, we had a good time. But Chris, let's talk about when we were walking down the strip, and then we went to the old Las Vegas. When we walked in the casinos, like I was so taken aback, right? The people,
Yeah,
the
they
way they
tore
were gambling at those tables, and like some people look like they were there just to have a good time. They could afford to lose some money, and
It
maybe
was tore up.
but the majority of them, how did they look to you, Chris? Let's discuss that.
Yeah, they were tore up, man. I mean, they just looked beat up, like they were just beach bums that had just kind of hitchhiked a ride to get to Vegas. I'm like, what are these people? And they're sitting there hitting the button on the slot machines, Dan, back to back. I'm just like, this is insanity.
Or some of them at the table, I'm like, Chris, something. Look at it. Like we were pointing out a couple, like this guy's betting his rent money. He even said it to his buddy. I'm like,
Really?
yeah, I was like, yo, what the like? So I guess what we're saying, Chris and I, we did a video on this too. Chris, tell the people, did we bet on anything while we were there?
Oh yeah, Dan and I are the only two gentlemen that go to Las Vegas and spend $0 to gambling.
We watched a lot of people gamble.
I love it. I watch my wife gamble all the time.
We watched a lot of people gamble, but we didn't gamble, right? So the way we look at it, Chris, what you said it best on the video. Why don't we gamble when we go to Vegas?
We live a life of gambling every day. Every penny that we make, every decision that we make is a gamble. We don't have security of going to work somewhere and y'all hit that like 110 people. Y'all don't got 10 thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up. Dan, in the reality, when you wake up in the morning, it's like no one, for me, people are like, I have trouble focusing, people that have secure incomes and stuff. I'm like, I didn't have that luxury to not focus. And I'm not saying I'm big and bad. I just had to pay I had to pay the rent. I had to eat. I had to do this. And it was my whole life was a gamble.
So, guys, that's the reason why we gamble every day of the week. Every day we buy property in the hopes that that property is going to work out, that we could bring that
Why
property under
not?
budget on the
Why not?
renovations,
You're
that
right.
we could, in the hopes that that property is going to appreciate as we anticipate it to appreciate.
Why
You know,
not?
but the difference is that when we gamble, the odds are in our favor because we've done our
Yeah.
research and we're gambling based on our experience, our knowledge, our education. We're not gambling when the odds are in the house's favor. Like hell no, we ain't doing that
Big
crap.
difference. Big difference. I got a question. 7 Ace says signed a contract with a wholesaler on a property. Good for you. Congratulations. Let's stay there. Pat yourself on the back, dude. Don't be like everybody else and be like, I'm looking for the next deal. Live in the moment. How many people even buy more than one house in their entire life? So
Right.
I want to congratulate you on that. Okay, but the deal is not penciling out. Contract says sale is final. That don't mean nothing. But can I offer deal back to them, or should I bite the bullet and flip the house? I guess when somebody says the deal is not penciling out, are they saying that the numbers aren't making sense?
Yeah, you know, I feel bad for you, and I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why.
7 Ace. 7.
I get this question. I get mentees that schedule one-on-one mentorship classes, one-on-one
What are they saying,
consultation.
Dan? What are they saying? Are they
They're
saying
saying that after they sign a contract, the deal doesn't look right. It's not penciling out. After they do the underwriting on it, the numbers don't make sense. That's
yeah,
how I'm reading it.
that happens?
So
That happens.
what I say to people is, you're so worried about spending 100, $200 speaking to a guy like Kris or myself before you actually sign that contract, that now you're into the deal, right? So I tell people, whether it be Kris, myself, I don't care who, go speak to somebody that's got experience, right? Let them look at the numbers. 99, nine, if I, so, let's say I get 10 people bring me deals that they think is really exciting. By the time we finish with the one-on-one consultation, they're depressed. What? They didn't lose no money. They didn't put up escrow,
They should
right?
be happy. They
Right.
should
They're
be happy.
depressed because they're not gonna make that particular deal, but then they get that afterwards and they think about it, they're happy because they realize, damn, I would have been in trouble if I did that deal. You
Mhm.
know, so reach out to people like Kris, reach out to people like myself, reach out to a family member or friend that has experience, flipping property or buying property. Don't call your Uncle Tom that all he has is one property. Don't ask your mother that's never owned a property. Don't ask your brother that only owns a house that he lives in because he doesn't understand this.
Spend
Reach
the
out to
money, bro.
somebody that does this for a living. That's all they do,
Spend the
right?
money. Don't get mad. People like, you charge what for a consultation? I'm like, yeah, I got 20 years in the game. Dan charges for consultation, and don't forget, we still spend money. Dan and I just spent thousands to go to a conference to network with other people. So
We
we're still
we
spending
we,
money.
we each just spent about $6,000-7,000 to be there, to go network with other people, right? And to learn. I learned. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Kris and I met at a conference in 2019. It cost us each about 12 grand to be there because we bought the VIP tickets, right? But look, we're still friends. We're collaborating. We're making money together. We've made that money back. But the point is, we put ourselves in a room where everybody else was bigger than us. We were the smallest fish in that room.
There was
Not
some
this
big girls in there
conference,
too.
but when the conference we met at at the Vote conference in 2019, I felt like I was a guppy in that room. I was, now the room I was in yesterday, this week, we were sharks.
I
I
mean,
didn't feel
there was some
comfortable
big.
there.
There was some big dudes in there. One dude was doing 10 deals a month, and then one dude managing. The guy, the speaker. He's got his own IRA custodian. I mean, he's got a billion under ass. Did he say? Is he managing a billion, or he said he had a billion in transactions?
Billion transactions.
But he still had his own IRA custodian. That's what I want.
Yeah, yep, yep.
I'm IRA.
What you want to explain that to people? What that is?
IRA custodian. So now he can actually administer other people's IRAs now. That's where I want to. Damn, I never told you this. I really would in the morning like to get up, put a suit on, and go run a IRA custodian. I would
You
love to
did.
do this
You,
every day.
you actually did tell me that.
Oh, I did.
Yeah,
So one of
you
my
did.
dreams is to be able to, because I'm tired of just going to the man for these IRA accounts. Well, just imagine if you had your own Fidelity or your own.
Well, explain to them what's a self-direct IRA.
What a self-directed IRA is, where you actually have to administer your own investments. And when I'm talking to, that's one of the, in my community, we're babies. Like people will open up a self-directed Roth IRA and they'll have it for a year and they'll say, it didn't make any money. I didn't know, nobody did any trades for me. That's because you are the asset manager. You have to make the trades and buy the assets and buy the stocks. And so that's what a self-direct, it's truly self-directed.
So Kris, it's late, man. Let's call it a
Yeah.
night. I want to thank everyone for being here, guys. I do a free mentorship class every single Wednesday night. Just go to danielborrerojr.com, danielborrerojr.com. Go to my Instagram account. It's also my link there, my profile link. So again, follow Kris and I both on Instagram and YouTube. That's all we ask for in
Yeah.
return for all this information we give.
See y'all soon. Make sure you subscribe, hit that thumbs up. I got 80 people. Y'all better hit that daggone thumbs up there. See you, Dan.
Good night, everyone.
Peace.